The story of East Bay Calvary Church begins with a simple gathering. Just a few faithful men and women meeting weekly as the Calvary Bible class in the late 1940s. But that small Bible study wasn't the end of the story, it was just the beginning. On September 28, 1949, the group made a major decision. The building committee, Peter Visser and Albert Hagen, had purchased a portable church building from Hope Reformed Church in Grand Rapids for $1,200. They also secured 300 chairs from Niagara Lumber Company for $800. At that same meeting, Dr. Earl Baker offered a parcel of land along US 31 between 4 and 5 mile roads. It was a unanimous yes. 3 trustees were elected, Dr. Haynes, Pete Visser, and Al Hagen. And the group officially adopted a new name, East Bay Calvary Church. A 10-foot addition was quickly added to the new building for Sunday school classrooms, restrooms, and a furnace. That building became known as Visser Hall, the birthplace of worship and community for this new congregation.
We were all in Visser Hall when I first started, and all the Sunday school classes were in there, the church service was in there, everything was there, and you look at how much it's grown over all the years, and I've helped paint in different buildings when we were building, doing different things with that. We used to roller skate in Visser Hall when we were younger. I remember even Pete Visser, who was an older man when I was here as a child too, but the hall was named after Pete Visser, and he was a great inspiration in starting the church even way back then. So.
My beginning memories of the small church. It was right snugged up to the trees, the pine trees where the original church was. One of the things that Dave did, several men had to crawl underneath the church and rebuild underneath the church the beams because the water from the swamp was causing the church beams to rot. And the church was beginning to tilt, and that wasn't too good for a church.
The first official service of East Bay Calvary Church was held on January 22, 1950, led by Reverend Charles W. Sine. It was a weekend of celebration with guest speaker Dr. Malcolm Cronk from South Baptist Church in Lansing joining in for a special 3-day event. Pastor Sine served until 1957. In the years that followed, the church was led by several pastors, each bringing their own unique gifts. Reverend Dean Ballard, Reverend Kenneth Springstead, and Reverend Wright Van Plew, who served as interim pastor in 1963. Under Pastor Van Plew's leadership, a new worship space was constructed, a larger building simply called the Auditorium. On July 12, 1964, the auditorium was officially dedicated by East Bay's new pastor, Reverend John Lowson. After Pastor Lowson, Reverend Kenneth Orr served briefly before Reverend Kendale Dennis was called to be the new lead pastor in June of 1972. He would go on to lead East Bay Calvary for an incredible 45 years.
I went through several pastors here because the first man was Pastor Lowson, and I really appreciated him, but he was only here for a short time and he moved on. Then a man named Pastor Orr came. He was very evangelistic, and a lot of people came to our church during that time. And following him, it was Pastor Dennis. And for most of my life at East Bay Calvary, for the most of East Bay Calvary's life, it's been Pastor Dennis. So he was a very big influence in my life. We were good friends, we did things together, and it was very positive. And he also talked me into joining the church, because up to that time I was just kind of been an attender. And he said, I told him, he said, I'm not that good of a person. I was looking at myself, and he said, when you become part of God's family, God uses the family to grow you. And so I joined the church at that time, and it really became a significant part of my life.
During that time, the church continued to expand. A new hallway, nursery, and classroom, later known as the fireside room, were built on the south side of the building, and in 1980, a brand new sanctuary was constructed to meet the needs of a growing congregation.
I wanted to mention we had a building project scheduled down on Holiday Hills. We were going to build a new sanctuary. And Pastor Dennis and I went down to the bank to close on the deal. And we got there and they said, well, we can't give you the money. There was a reverter clause in the contract for the property we were at, that if any time the property ceased to be a church, it would revert back to the original owners, which the bank could not loan us the money on account of that. And so Pastor Dennis and several others went down to Lansing and put together a bonding issue where we issued bonds to the people in the church at a good interest rate. And as a result, the church was built, and people that invested in that got a good return on their investment. And so it just goes to show you that the Lord a lot of times has a better plan than you do. And so we were very, very happy with that, the way it came out.
And I met my wife, who was the church secretary at that time. Dave Green and Pastor Dennis did a little bit of matchmaking through Word of Life and some other efforts. And we linked up and got married, and we were the first to be married in the new sanctuary.
When I think of East Bay, the building, I think of back when it was at US 31 and Holiday Road where the Walgreens is right now. And I just remember a lot of events there, a lot of potlucks after church, and a lot of teen events like doing car washes and holding signs out by the road, to after Sunday night church, walking over to Burger King with friends and just having fun that way.
As East Bay grew in size, it also grew in creativity. The church began to explore new and innovative ways to reach the community. Ministries that reflected a deep desire to share the gospel beyond the walls of the building.
You know, something also unique about East Bay was we had a drive-in. And it wasn't a movie with a big screen, and it wasn't speakers in our windows. It was drive-in church. It was in the summers for Sunday night services. And it was great because you could go to the beach, you could go to the park, you could stay home before and just drive from there to church. You come in the parking lot, park in a spot, and it was Sunday night church. And pastor would preach and we'd sing, and they even passed the offering plate, of course, to each of the cars. So that was something that was really different. I think we only did it for a couple of years, but it was really different. Kind of like Come As You Are church.
Children's ministry has always been at the heart of East Bay. From Sunday school and VBS to midweek programs, the church became a place where kids could experience the love of Christ and build a foundation of faith.
There was a time when there was children coming to church, but there was nothing for them to do. And I believe this was like on a Wednesday night. There was nothing, no programs for the children. So Jill Hardley, myself, and Karen Braden, we invented a children's program. So all the little boys and girls, we would go in a little room, not very big, and we would have a Bible story and sing the little Bible songs with the boys and girls while the adults were praying, so that the children had Bible nourishment and stories.
When I was probably 10, 11, my mom, my dad at the time was not a believer, so my mom took on the spiritual leadership, and she knew that I needed something, a church family, or needed something sound, and so she brought me to the Awana program, and I can remember very vividly learning scripture through that program, and so
my family and I came to Traverse City and East Bay Calvary in 1977. And at that time, we were down on Holiday Hills, and we was in the old church building along with Visser Hall. And since then, we shortly after that, we started Word of Life clubs here. And that was a very successful ministry as we ministered to junior, senior high school kids, and disciplining them in Bible study, quiet time, scripture memory, and several other ministry activities. And we had that for probably 10 years while we were here, and really enjoyed working with the kids.
The early decades of East Bay Calvary were marked by faith, sacrifice, and a clear calling to love God, love others, and make Jesus Christ known.